Welcome, folks. This is Two E's in the Pod. I'm Eche.
Emeka.
And today we're going to be talking about a very important issue that's plaguing our society. We're talking about male loneliness, a lack of intimacy, right? And let's begin this conversation with just your initial thoughts about the topic.
I guess it's when you're looking at sort of intimacy and sort of male loneliness, you have to now sort of break it down to sort of different fraction. So are you the type of person that's constantly around people but still feel that innate loneliness in regards to not being able to fully open up about yourself and about things that are deeply worrying for you, things that you might be going through, whether it's financial, whether it's career, whether it's, do you know what I mean, just being able to find a companion. So it's literally understanding what we're talking about when we're talking about loneliness. Are you the type of person that's physically lonely because you don't have a network or people around you? And I think let's break down all of those different facets and then delve a little bit deeper into it. What about you?
I think before we even jump into it, just to get your perspective, because one of the stereotypes is that men don't talk.
Yeah.
Right? So to what extent does that, or did that apply to you throughout your, did you have those people you could actually open up to in times of difficulty?
I think, sort of looking back, I would say predominantly for me, it was more about keeping my cards close to my chest, essentially. So when you're going through things, that innate thing of, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out myself. And that standard response of when somebody says, how things going, just all good, bro. And so you sort of brush it away to the side because, again, there's a level of vulnerability that you have to expose yourself to, especially when you're now sort of talking about intimate parts of your life that you're not entirely comfortable with, maybe because in that particular situation you feel vulnerable and you don't know how these individuals will use that. Even with your closest people, these will use that to now what they think about it. Not to necessarily say they're going to do anything bad with that information, but it's just the fact that it's now out there and it's no longer just your secret. So just that level of anxiety, I think, is some of the reasons why a lot of men will just keep things to themselves, even when they have partners and so on and so forth. And so it's more of, I'm just going to try and figure it out myself.
Yeah. Okay. Now, for me, I think I've been blessed in the sense that I've always had at least one individual that I can go with and we can talk and it's not a case of, oh, how you doing? I'm okay, I'll get through it. We go deep. I'm talking subterranean, right? We actually break it down and we can be vulnerable with each other and actually figure out where we're at and what we can do to support one another. So I think I'm one of the lucky ones that has that individual or those individuals in my life, but a lot of people don't seem to have those individuals.
How did you come to create that space with this person?
You know what? That's a great question. And I don't know if I have a great answer to that. I feel like without articulating it, we made a decision that we're going to be vulnerable, right? We made that decision, okay? And then maybe we just clicked. I don't know. But I feel like at the end of the day, once you open up to somebody, then their response is like, oh, swear, we can do this, right? And then they can reciprocate. But if nobody opens up in that dimension, then the relationship will kind of maintain at that level where, yeah, everything is good, everything is calm. But I don't know who opened the gate to the vulnerability, but we definitely reciprocated. And before we knew it, this is just what we do, right? This is what we do. So part of it, I guess, is making that decision, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, to be vulnerable. Okay, and actually say what you're feeling and what you're struggling with, because that, what do they say, insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results. If every encounter is, I'm fine, even though you're not fine, then when is it going to change, right? When is the opportunity for the relationship to actually expand in terms of the depth and the vulnerability?
So with that, once you've now shared these things with each other, what is the feeling afterwards in terms of once you now left each other, for instance? How are you feeling? Are you feeling like, you know what, I'm glad I got that off my chest, and then it gives you the impetus to now move forward and try and find solutions to whatever that issue is? Or that, yeah, just what is the sense that you get once that sort of interaction is done?
I think one of the key aspects is in having these conversations, you realize at the end of the day, even though we have different fingerprints, the struggles that we're going through, they're pretty much the same, right? So there's going to be an overlap, or you can empathize, or you saw yourself in that particular situation, or perhaps they have a unique insight in terms of the angle that they're breaking it down from, because you can only see it one way, but they might have an interesting piece in terms of the response. Or it could be a case whereby you just needed someone to actually listen to what you're saying, right? So it's not every conversation that actually needs a solution. Maybe sometimes you do, but sometimes it might be a case where you just want to actually express some frustration or what happened to you or what you're going through.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that makes sense. Because like you said, it's not always about what is the outcome of this particular conversation, but in terms of just the process of talking. And having that deeper understanding of, okay, you know what, somebody else is going through this. Somebody else is actually just listening, because that's what a lot of people say is like they just want that ability to be able to share something and know that somebody's listening to what they have to say, and then from there, whatever will be, you know?
Yeah. And you know what? One thing that I think is making the problem worse, ironically, is the fact that we're so much more connected digitally and online, that's actually eroding physical connections.
Yeah.
Text message, there's no life in the text message, right? There's no, as much as you might do a smiley, seeing that face is a whole different situation, especially in a three-dimensional situation. So the fact that we're more socially connected together, we've got more friends and followers than ever before, but yet we're seeing this crisis of intimacy go in one direction, and it's not a positive direction. So I think it's definitely making the problem worse.
Yeah, because one thing that happens is, especially with this sort of social connection through technology, one of the things that we're now looking at and seeing is that even though that we're more connected than ever, it's now putting people off actually being around each other sometimes, especially when it's somebody would rather text on the phone than actually be on the phone. It's like we've just got into that stage where some of that more intimate conversations are not what we want anymore. It's like, you know what, I just want to be by myself and let's just engage in this, because I don't want to now. It's almost as if it's a lot of hard work to now engage in some of those regular type of conversations in terms of being on the phone, and you know, it takes a lot out of people now. It's like when I see things online, it's like, what? Why are you calling? Like, just text me, that type of thing. And so that's the habit that we're in, you know, due to social media and due to technology in general. But yeah.
And there's something I want to talk about. I guess maybe we could talk about some of the solutions and strategies we've implemented. And this is something that I borrowed from you, right? So something that you mentioned was that you had one of your friendship groups from the secondary school, 20 plus years deep. And what is it that you kind of try to establish?
I guess it's with that, because once you're at different stages of education, it's like, you know, you have some great friends, and then you really find out how the longevity of that friendship is once that central place that brought you together is no longer there. And then it's like, okay, what's keeping us together? And so, you know, with secondary school, there was, you know, just a handful of people that you are still connected to for all these years. Same thing when you go to college, even less. It's like, okay, I'm in 2 years, boom, I'm out, you know. And then university, again, it's the same thing. It's like 3 years, any real connection there that I'm keeping until further down the line. But for us, it's just understanding that we're going on through this journey of life, and we have significant moments where you can now share in our joys and our lows, in terms of understanding I've been there for some of their lows, I've been there for their highs, and vice versa as well, in terms of when things are happening to us. So it's like just being there and knowing that these relationships are not transactional, in terms of because you did for me and then I want this back. This is just a relationship of just love of brothers, essentially, you know.
Okay. And one of the things that you did, if I'm correct, is you would schedule these monthly kind of get-togethers, right? And I had to borrow that. I'm like, that's dope. Let's do that. Yeah. So I had like three friends from the year 2000. So again, 20 years deep. Of course, everyone's in different stages of their life, but can we at least commit one day per month to get together and do something? And we had one fantastic run where we did it 12 times in the calendar year, and it was beautiful, right? But you know what? in those instances, often it was, okay, let's go and do this. Let's go and do axe throwing. Let's go and do paintballing or whatever the case may be.
Some elaborate
some kind of activity. But the last link up that we did was one of the best of all time. And all we did was we got to the same place and we just chilled. And we just talked. And we remember, this is why we bonded. This is why we bonded. We don't need talk or social. We don't need this to be engaged.
It's nice, but
we don't need. It's not mandatory. We can just vibe for 3-4 hours. We ate, we talked, we laughed, and then we went home. Right? That's what we need to do. We need more of these interactions. Right? And then there's one more thing that I would like to add in terms of a possible solution before we see if there's anything you have to add to this particular situation. So something I've taken it upon myself is to always disturb somebody in the sauna, right? Always disturb somebody in the sauna, because that seems to be, for me, somehow a very intimate location, right? Okay, and I'll just say, how was the workout? And then the conversation, more times than not, I would say for me, 9.5 times out of 10, we end up talking about something deep, right? How was the workout? Spirals 2. Such and such about my life in Brazil, such and such about my difficulties with drinking, such and such about my difficulties and this and things that I'm going through. And people just naturally open up, because me, I go in from a place of, I'm going to be vulnerable from the jump. And then they understand, oh, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. And then they let their guard down, right? So I would challenge you, it might not be the sauna, but try and find little moments where you take the onus and you be vulnerable, and I'm telling you, people will respond in kind because you set the precedent. Okay, this is a safe space for vulnerability. So every time I make it my thing to just talk to whoever's in the sauna. If the conversation flatlines, perfect. If it blossoms into something deep, perfect, right? But at the end of the day, it's actually taking advantage of those small spaces in time, those crucible moments where we're in the same place, we're not going nowhere. Actually engage with your common human being. Give it a go in the comments. Let me know. If not the sauna, where might you actually incorporate this practice?
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off that, I think the most recent one is I went to a father's event, father's group, and then it's, you know, everyone's just talking about their experiences and so on and so forth. And so it's like, you know, when somebody sort of opens up in regards to a chink in the armor in terms of saying something, it makes you now feel like, okay, yeah, I can, you know, I've had a similar experience. And there's something around having that commonality with other fathers or just men or whoever it is that you're speaking to, especially when you're sort of talking to strangers. It's like, sometimes you feel even freer to now speak on certain issues, because it's like, you don't feel like there's any room for you to be judged. This is just a one-time space. I might never see you again, but it's like, it's good to know that I can speak on this and you have something else that you can add on this particular topic. And so all of a sudden that vulnerability sort of disappears and everybody's now able to talk from an organic, from a pure sense where there's more meaning to those conversations. And it's quite rare when you see that happens. But I feel like in this day and age where a lot of men are now embracing that intimacy, that vulnerability, and are seeking it essentially, because again, it's like, from a married perspective, it's like, you know, in an ideal world, everybody says there's everything that you can speak to your wife about and so on and so forth. But then you speak to other husbands who say, you know what, yes, I love my wife, but there's certain things that I can't discuss. She will never understand. This is from a male perspective, and it's just almost tokenism for me to just share it because I'm just sharing it for the sake of sharing it. But in terms of to get actual value from that conversation, then it needs to be other guys who are potentially going through the same thing and who have something that they can add from the perspective that, because they know we've been in the same boat essentially. So yeah, I think your point about the sauna being in that intimate place where 9 times out of 10 nobody wants to be talking, you know what I mean, this is you're breaking the code right now, but again, it's challenging yourself in those moments of where you're not comfortable and try and figure out ways to make yourself comfortable in those spaces.
Yeah, I think I've said everything I have to say. Nothing else to say. We've said it. So what I need you to do, folks, is leave me a comment, right? What do you think about what we said? Do you agree? Do you have any suggestions? What are you doing to kind of tackle and push back against this epidemic of male loneliness? And before you go, don't forget to like, Subscribe, share this video if it's added some value to your life, and please stay tuned. There's plenty more to come. This is 2 E's in the pod. I'm Eche.
Emeka, let's go.